If you read the title of this video and are only interested in the second half of it, feel free to skip ahead to this time code. Otherwise, let's all enjoy this 20-minute meme of an episode. Following up on last week's big reveal, even though it really should have been pretty damn obvious from the very beginning, the Precure was still trying to come to terms with the fact that they would have to permanently part ways after this conflict was over, and everyone would have to return to their proper timelines. Emiru in particular was having the hardest time accepting it, even suggesting to Ruru that she didn't necessarily have to return to the future, but her partner didn't agree. But to her credit, Emiru did make a properly heroic statement saying that they would do their jobs and restore the future, though she also did this while laughing like Black Kanekawa. Wonder if that's a sign of things to come. Meanwhile, across Bishin was checking on Risto, who was in it too, likely working to replenish his Toge power. And of course, our very dependent little psychopath didn't take well to everyone not being around. Still, they did have the company of George. You know, sometimes the show makes my job way too easy.
I need an adult.
I am an adult.
Say, Georgie boy, what kind of cookies do you prefer? The next day at school, Kotori encountered a slightly more unusual version of Emiru. She puts on a face that reminds me of a certain someone. On top of losing her signature verbal tick of death knell, Kotori took notice of her friend's other unusual behavior. Yeah, that part I'm pretty sure Emiru's just usually like that. Regardless, her team needed to check in on her, especially after she started to become contagious.
One of us! One of us!
Hana first tried to snap her out of it by... Girl, please don't tell me you took advice from Mana of all people. Needless to say, that did work out, so next up was Sayan Homari's Whose Line Is It Anyway skit. Oh no, I think she's become the embodiment of the YouTube comment section. Last up was her brother. Yeah, maybe next time, try training with Tien. I'm sure he can help you out with that. Thankfully, Emiru was finally snapped out of her stupor with the help of Ruru. Still, trying to ask how a young girl was dealing with her emotional distress probably wasn't the best of ideas. As while Emiru clearly knew what she wanted to say, her moral fiber as a Precure wouldn't let her spit it out, causing her to go mute as a result. And without the emotional resolve to fulfill her duties, her Mirai crystal also faded away. And as we saw last week, since Emiru was originally meant to be the one and only fourth member of this team, when her crystal disappeared, so did Ruru's. The two who had shared a singular vision now had to share the same burden. Emiru's emotional problems soon reached the ears of her grandfather. Well, to be more precise, it reached his ears thanks to a little throwaway line from Bishin during a business meeting discussing a partnership between the Aisaki group and Kurasu. I think I just found my new favorite character in this show. Which I quickly retracted after he turned into your stereotypical "you kids and your damn rock music" old geezer. He tried to take custody of his granddaughter, even kind of guilt-tripping her into going with him, saying that it would be for the best, and now I know where Masato got it from. However, this guy wasn't the same Four Eyes he was at the beginning of the series, and he tried to defend his sister by tackling the old man and likely breaking the geezer's hip. Jeez, take it easy, Masato. Still, he did try to get Emiru to let out all of her emotions with a shout, which, come on, is a lot easier said than done. After all, this girl was clearly suffering from heavy emotional distress.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Okay, to be fair, Emiru wasn't completely cured yet, as she still needed to address the heart of the matter. And unfortunately, she wouldn't have much of an opportunity to do so, as her grandfather got into a car with Bishin, and oh come on! We don't get to see Bishin's awesome summoning animation? What, did they think it was too scary or something? Cause I remind you, this is what Emiru looked like throughout a good portion of this episode. Anyway, the original three gave them an opening to share their feelings with each other. Emiru finally admitted that, as unheroic as it sounded, she didn't want her friend to go back to the future. Ruru in turn admitted that she believed that the future would turn out just fine, but she needed to provide the future with something she got from Emiru, their song. A lot of their culture would have to start from scratch, and Ruru wanted Emiru's heartfelt lyrics to be at the forefront as they rebuilt the future. With the connection between the present and the future re-established, so were the Mirai crystals of the two. I'll use any excuse to use that clip. as well as remind everyone that I'm in the middle of producing a G review. They stunned the mole Shimada that thankfully didn't make much use of its appendages, and they cleansed it with the finisher that still legit kind of scares me. With that, the episode ended with Grandpa Aisaki accepting the power of rock, the Precure coming to terms with the fact that they will have to say farewell to their friends, and one adolescent figure skater who I completely forgot to mention in this review looking at a certain business card. While still rushed in parts, I will fully admit, I actually really like this episode because it covers themes that I think are very important to a show like this. Emiru in a lot of ways is like Yayoi Kisei minus the geekdom. They were both influenced by the heroics of others and thus wanted to follow in their example. And yet, by trying to follow such ideals to a T, Emiru ended up compromising the happiness of someone, herself. I admit, I'm a bit of a sucker for this quandary many superheroes face. How far should they take their selflessness? After all, there will always come a point where they might have to permanently sacrifice some of their own happiness. From there, how can they truly call themselves protectors if they can't even protect their own smile? These rather heavy moral quandaries were thankfully balanced out with some decent comedy in this episode. Granted, not all of the jokes hit, but that face, so that will be remembered, unfortunately. I was also somewhat thrown off by the pacing, mostly involving Emiru's in and out muteness. Her becoming mute somewhat made sense, but then just a little encouragement from Masato helped break it. I mean, it wasn't nearly as bad as other episodes, but it was still there. Really, the bigger issue I have with these two more involves their overusage throughout this series, but again, that's an issue that should be saved for the series overview. For now, if this is how they conclude the arc of the Six Rangers, at least until the epilogue of the show, it's a good high note to go out on. If you haven't seen it yet, I recently posted the first of my All-Stars New Stage movie reviews. Please feel free to check it out and enjoy my suffering as I try to get through a major low point in the All-Stars movies. And that's it for the Precure portion of the review. Now let's move on to the game series that everyone keeps pestering me about. Last week, Bandai Namco streamed a trailer for yet another Super Robot Wars game. Not using any actual clips here because I know how their copyright system works. It's called T because this franchise doesn't understand the concept of alphabetical order, and it's supposed to stand for Terra. Much like last year, I decided to combine this week's Precure review with my reaction to this trailer, as I do want to time match my video making better. So if you're not into the SRW franchise, feel free to click off now. Otherwise, I could sum up all my feelings about this upcoming title with just this.
But she's got a new hat.
Yeah, sorry if you guys were expecting me to be a little more excited, but that's becoming a progressively hard task to do with each iteration of this franchise that just refuses to change. Still, before I get roasted in the comments, I will point out the positives of this trailer. First of all, I think this is a much more solid roster than X and V. I especially like the fact that we're getting series that we haven't seen in years, like G Gundam, Gal Gaigar, and Gun Sword, which I think has only ever been on the DS games. Therefore, I think this will be the first time it'll actually be voice acted in these games. A fact that one of my followers, Chris X, is thrilled over. Some of the new animations for the returning series looks good, even though this is now the third game in a row that we've seen Mike Gein in. I thought they were trying to keep it to just one Brave series per game, but oh well, I guess it is a fairly real robot heavy game anyway. And of course, the news so big that Forbes decided to dedicate a whole article to, freaking clickbait site, Cowboy Bebop is going to be one of the debuting series in this new game. Which yeah, sounds awesome, even though I don't know how they're going to work it in. Bebop doesn't have a ton of space battles in it, and last I checked, the Syndicate and Vicious especially didn't have any sort of signature vehicles like Spike's Swordfish 2. But still cool, I guess. Other debuting series include Expelled from Paradise. Credit where it's due, it already looks better than the source material. Oh, that Uncanny Valley. Captain Harlock was an obvious choice after Yamato. And the one title that's honestly far more shocking than Cowboy Bebop, it really should have gotten that article, Magic Knight Rayearth. Yeah, while I'm more into Bebop, I am legit shocked that Clamp, for lack of a better term, released their tight grasp on one of their beloved properties. It's a title that has been long overdue for this franchise, and really should have been the last game since we had all that fantasy stuff going on. Lastly, the fact this is being released for the Switch sounds like great news to me. Personally, I prefer playing these games portably, but I also don't want to have to sacrifice on the visuals, so something that can play Breath of the Wild sounds like a good compromise to me. With all that said, am I actually excited about getting yet another SRW title almost a year after the last? Did you not see the Simpsons clip at the beginning of this segment? At this point, we're far removed from the Z games, and yet they're still using visual assets as far back as the Z2 games that came out on the PlayStation Portable back in 2011. Look, I don't want to have to step on anyone's toes, but I think for the sake of this franchise, we all have to kind of admit, these games have become kind of stagnant, and believe me, I'm not the only one who feels that way. I've looked through the comment sections of some Japanese streaming sites, and a lot of them have been pointing out how these games haven't really evolved that much since their PS2 days. As a result, sales of these titles have been in decline, not helped by the fact that, again, these are coming out only about a year apart. These games just don't feel special anymore when there's so little downtime in between. Again, I do think this is a great roster, and if it's up your alley, go crazy, but me personally, I'm kind of burnt out on SRW games at this point. So, as for whether or not I'm going to review this when it comes out, all I can say is, Maybe if the next trailer shows off some gameplay that doesn't include just another variation on the Z crystal system, then maybe I'll consider it, but for now, I can't make any promises. That's all I have to say for now. What do you guys think? Are you going to pick it up? Feel free to comment below, and let's just hope this isn't the end of their console games and they're not just going to focus solely on free to play. How much you want to bet they're going to involve gacha?